I wanted to go over next week's full moon. It's the harvest moon on the fall equinox, and it's a very important event, and actually it ties into the Statue of Liberty. And I'm going to explain how that happens and the importance of this full moon. I've decided to make a sister channel for Time Will Tell Astrology, where I can do these brief little summaries of what's going to be happening in the sky in the following week ahead. I'd like to use sidereal astrology, of course, but also keep in mind the tropical when I'm explaining what's the importance of these celestial events. And I think that's important because then I can tie in the astrotheology and people can start to understand the characters in the sky. And I think if we start to see them as characters in a play or in a movie, we can remember the importance of them and what they're trying to teach us. So I think that's a better way of understanding astrology. So I wanted to kind of do that. And if I do it every week and you can kind of know what's coming ahead and how those energies are going to affect you, you can start to use astrology to live by it. Not just think, oh, okay, this is what they're following, but we can start to use these energies to know how to manifest what we need. I will drop the link for Time Will Tell Astrology in the description box. The fall equinox, full moon, so it's a harvest moon, and it's happening at 7:54 on September 20th, which is Monday. It's actually the election day in Canada, so it's pretty intense, and I think it's going to be really emotional for people. So the solstices and the equinoxes are really important. And the fall equinox in normal tropical astrology would be in Libra. And this would be the halfway point between the longest day of the year, which is the summer solstice, and the shortest day of the year, which is the winter solstice. So it's like it's equal day, right? So this is in Libra, and Libra is the balance, right? It's ruled by Venus. It's ruled by Venus air. So I did speak about how that is the justice card. So it's very important because it's holding the balance and it's referencing to justice. So the justice card is the Omega on the Kabbalah. So you need the Alpha and Omega. Alpha is the Fool's card and the Justice card is the Omega, which is really like the death symbol. It's like a doorway, right? So it has to do with to see the illusion of this realm, you have to kind of, in a way, want to speak about the truth of this realm. And you want to, in a way, be righteous and say, look, this realm is an illusion. So that makes you fighting for justice, right? So you want to show people that we've all been fooled, right? So that's kind of why everybody's so intense right now is because everybody's awakening and they want people to believe them, right? In some sense, you kind of you start to see it a certain way, and then you go, okay, and then you start to see the injustice of this realm, and you want to stand up for your rights, which is what people are doing, right? They don't want to take the vaccine, so they're starting to stand up for their rights. So this is what this whole election in Canada is going to be all about. It actually, this justice card ties to the Statue of Liberty. Okay, so the Statue of Liberty is not what she's not representing what a lot of people think she represents. She's representing the golden age, and I will go into that through a goddess that is very, very hidden in the mythology. It's taken me a long time to find her. So I did find her, and I'll teach you who the Statue of Liberty really is representing. It's funny, the Justice card with the sword and the balance, which is Libra, looks like a man, looks like the king, but it's really a queen. Now in sidereal on September 20th, that's when Einstein had measured the speed of light, right, on Zabby-Java when there was an eclipse. So on September 20th, the sun is on Zabby-Java, which is ascension. So we have the ascension star on this, full moon, and then we also have, the fall equinox being typically in Libra. So Virgo and Libra in history had a relationship with each other, and I never really understood why until I figured out who the Statue of Liberty is representing. So I want to go into that. But this is really what's happening in the sky. You can see Mercury is on the Tree of Life Spica star, the harvest star. Venus is very close to Shambhala, and then Mars, the hero, is on close to Porima, which is to do with the hero. So it's a very intense placement where everything is. Midday on September 20th, the moon and Neptune are in conjunction. And the moon in esoteric astrology represents Neptune because that's the card that is the moon card in tarot. It is ruled by Neptune. Okay, so there's a relationship, and that to me is the harvest path. Okay, so there's intensity going on in the sky. It's almost like a battle going on between the two, ascension and the harvest. So Osiris and Uranus are in Aries, the crown chakra, right? So that's intense. That's heaven, and then he's like the, Osiris. He's the tree. It's on the crown, and then Jupiter and Saturn are up in Capricorn. So anyhow, it's pretty intense, and I'll go into it through the wheel. So interestingly, the constellations are all in their proper houses right at the full moon. Like the first house is normally ruled by Aries. That would be your crown, and then your feet would be Pisces, the 12th house. So your body wraps around this. They're all in the perfect location. Now, Neptune, who rules Pisces, which is the spiritual constellation, is with the moon in Pisces. They're not quite in conjunction now at the exact hour of the full moon, but they were in the earlier part of the day. So that's very spiritual, right? And Neptune's all about your imagination and your emotions, is the moon. So it's like everything's about the spiritual aspect of, wanting to have the freedom to, not have the lockdown AI passport for this Canadian election. Now, your Pluto is your soul, and it's in the 9th house, which is the spiritual house. So that's like really glorified because it's in Sagittarius, and that is ruled by Jupiter, which brings all really good luck to it. So that's really powerful. And then the sun is in the 5th house, which is opposing the moon in the 11th house. So the sun being in the 5th house, which has to do with your creative abilities. So your creative abilities is on the ascension star. And then your emotions is all in the spiritual aspect, in networking and communicating with people, like networking with people. And then heaven is in your crown chakra in your 1st house of personality. That if somebody was born at this time, that would be what I would say, okay? So, but you can just say that's pretty intense what's happening. Everything is in their own house, so everything's really powerful. But there's a duality going on between the moon and the sun, and I see that as the two paths, right? The sun activates you to ascend. It's a solar activity that comes through your body, and it's ascension, and the sun is on ascension stars, Abhijaba, and then the moon and Neptune is the harvest path, which is, you're believing in, Pisces is I believe. So you're believing in the science as your religion. So there's a duality going on in the opposition. So it's like a real battle. It's intense. It doesn't surprise me that they put the election on this day. So this is Justice, right? If you look into the artwork, and there's always like a moon behind her. She's blindfolded, which means she's impartial. She doesn't put one person ahead of the other. She sees everybody as equal, and she has the sword, wanting the justice and going to fight for the justice. Now, who is this mystery woman? Okay, she's Astraea. She's the goddess of the stars, and she believes in freedom for the golden age. According to the myth, when Astraea returns to Earth one day, she will once again bring utopia that was during the golden age, bringing an end to human suffering. And you can see she's also Dyke. Now, Dyke is Lady Justice. Astraeus is her father, and Eos is her mother. But what's really weird, the 17th letter, when he had his post, he spoke about Lady Justice and the sword. And I went in on a big dig on it, and I came to a dead end. It was just, Lady Justice. And, no, this is the goddess of the Golden Age. Astraea is a celestial virgin, was the last of the immortals to live with humans during the Golden Age, the previous Golden Age that we had. One of the old Greek religions, 5 deteriorating ages of man, is, one of them is the Golden Age. The other one's the Iron Age, which is what we're in. Okay, so people convert gold, family and friends don't trust each other in the Iron Age. This is what's happening. So Astraea abandoned the earth during the Iron Age, fleeing from the new wickedness of humanity. She ascended to the heavens to become the constellation Virgo. This is where Virgo and Libra tie in. The nearby constellation Libra reflected her symbolic association with Dyke, who's Lady Justice, who is a Latin culture as Justia, is said to precede over the constellation. In tarot, the 8th card, Justice, with the figure of Justia, can thus be considered related to the figure of Astraea on historical iconographic grounds. Okay, so this is, and Virgo is also Persephone. Okay, so Persephone, she is the virgin, and she goes from Hades back and forth. She's immortal. So, they have different names because it's to confuse you, right? But I was fascinated because I found even her family line. Astraeus and Eos, they had her as a daughter. Then all the other planets, Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, they all have different names there as well. And those are her brothers. And then on the other side, it's the 4 gods that rule the wind, north, south, east, and west winds. But they hardly ever mention her. She's really, really important, right? She's the Statue of Liberty, Lady Justice. She's Lady of Liberty. They're all the same goddess, like Dyke. They're all the same. They want freedom for humanity. But I had no idea it was tied to the Golden Age. So her mother, Eos, is the goddess of the dawn. She's Aurora, which would be in Sleeping Beauty, right? And I spoke about this before. This all relates to this star. The star is Astros. It's like Eastros. Ties into Wiccan, which is, where did I see that? The goddess Aurora. It's Ostara. So Ostara stems from Eastros. This is like pre-Christianity. There was an Easter, right? It's all ties into her, this goddess of dawn. And then it's saying here, Eos was the daughter of the Titan Hyperion and Thea. So Hyperion would be Hyperborea, right? The bringer of light, the one above, who travels high above the earth, and Thea, the divine. So those are her parents. That would be Astraeus' grandparents. And then Eos married Titan Astraeus of the stars and became the mother of the winds, and then also of the morning star Venus, and then all the other planets, but they don't mention that on this page. But it's all ties in, so it's fascinating. We're starting to understand all the relationships between all the different characters. So I guess that's why they always have Easter in the spring as well, because it's Ostara, that's Easter. It's like a different spelling of Ostrias. Ostrias is like Easter. So that's in the spring, and March 22nd, so that's 322. When we have the blood moon in 2025 is happening at 322 in the night. So that's important. And this would be the star tarot card, which is the Ascension star, right? And that's Zabijaba. So this is why I'm saying this is really important. This full moon that we have being with the sun on Zabijaba. It's all tying into this mythology. So here it's explaining how Astraeus had her and then all the other planets and their names. So you can just see it here. So it's really fascinating. They're called the Wanderers, right? All the planets are called the Wanderers because the ancients saw the stars stay fixed, in their constellations, but the planets were moving through the constellations. So people called them the wanderers stars, the wandering stars, or the wanderers. That's what the planets are called. So here they're explaining she's the star maiden, or she's called Starry Night. So remember the song Starry, Starry Night by Don McLean? And he's actually singing about the famous painting that Van Gogh did. So, it's amazing. That song, I always wonder, I always sing it when I look up at the sky. I go, Starry, Starry Night, paint your palette blue and gray. It's weird. I always sing that song when I look up at the sky. It's crazy. So that's her. She is a virgin goddess of justice, innocence, purity, and precision. She is closely associated with the Greek goddess or justice Dike. So sometimes they say, Dike's parents are Jupiter and Thymus. So that gets misinterpreted sometimes. She is not to be confused with Astraea, the goddess of the stars and the daughter of Equinox and Phoebe. The main belt asteroid 5, Astraea, is named after her. And so she's on Stellarium. And they also wanted to name Uranus, the heaven planet, they wanted to name her, that name to that planet. So you see, she's to do with heaven. She's to do with the Golden Age, which is what heaven is. So in the book called Paradise Lost, John Milton's epic poem, when Satan is discovered in the Garden of Eden and brought before the angel Gabriel, the two on the verge of war. So hung forth in heaven his golden scales, yet seen betwixt Astraea and Scorpio signs. So right between, when they say Astraea, they're talking about Libra. And within all things created first, he weighed the pendulous round earth with balanced air. So they're talking about the Libra constellation. In counterpose now ponders all events, battles, and realms. So that's like, okay, so there's a battle going on. This location in the sky is where the tree of life is, right? It's at the tail of Scorpio, and that's the tree of life in the sky. Osiris, Orion is the tree of life, but he's not in the zodiac. So in the zodiac, it's at the tail of Scorpio between Astraea, which would be Libra, and Scorpio. They're saying right between there. They're talking about the tree of life. That's what they're doing, and it's to do with Satan and Gabriel in the Garden of Eden. And it just so happens that's the last blood moon we had on May 26th was right in that location with this Deshkuba star and Akrab. This is the fan on Scorpio, which is like almost in Libra, right? So that's what they're talking about between Astraea, Libra, and Scorpio. It's all to do with the tree of life. And so that's fascinating because that was the end of the Aztec calendar that Elvis Presley wore on his last performance, right? So this moon is really important, and obviously it's really important that it was in that location. So here they're saying she represents justice, purity, innocence, and was the last one to leave the earth of the Golden Age. Okay, so now the story goes is she was going around trying to convince everybody that they needed to have morals again and not to fall into the Iron Age. And she was trying so hard and desperately, trying to get everybody to stay in a higher frequency of consciousness. Then she gave up, and then she left. It's just kind of like the story of, she represents the Golden Age, but Pandora represents the opening of the jar, which they say is now a box, but it was originally a jar, and she brings on the Iron Age. So Pandora brings on the Iron Age, and then Astraea represents the Golden Age. So here they're explaining all the other goddesses that are the justice goddesses. And so there's many names, so you can get distracted. But Lady Liberty, Lady Luck, she represents that. Also, this Operation Task Force for Native American women that had gone missing was all to do with her. So we only have one party that's saying to not have the passports, which is the People's Party of Canada. It's a small party, and people are wanting to vote for them to stop the passports coming in Canada, but who knows? So this is Lady Justice in Ottawa. She's there. She's kind of hidden, almost like a druid. It would be awesome if Canada voted for freedom of these passports, because, Canada represents, the land of the strong and free. And so, and also esoterically, freedom is in the north, right? North Pole. It represents towards the liberation of the Golden Age. The Golden Age is at the North Pole. So it would be interesting. And, also the fact that the border between Canada and US is on the 49th parallel, and this is when the soul goes into the body at 49 days and has a big, huge DMT release in the brain. So I'm kind of like, I wonder if we're going to pull this off and be able to get rid of these passport mandates. I somehow, got my doubts, because there's a lot of people that want it, and then there's a lot of people that don't. But all I'm saying is it's going to be very emotional, because there's like a battle going on with this harvest moon, right? And harvest moon is not really a good moon when it comes to going to the Golden Age. You don't want to be harvested to get into the Golden Age. You want to ascend through your Kundalini. You don't want to, be the ones taken, and it's not the right path. So now every time I look at Lady Justice or the Statue of Liberty, I'm thinking of Astraea. There she is in Switzerland. There she is in Brazil at the Supreme Court. There she is in Rome with her sword. Here they're explaining with the blindfold that she appears to as a Prudentia, but this is in Hong Kong. There she is. That's in Hong Kong, which is surprising. She doesn't look Asian. There, Frankfurt. And here in London, and this one's in Japan, Czech Republic, also in Japan, the thymus, and then again in Japan. So Memphis in France, Australia, it's in New Jersey, Budapest, Hungary, and Belgium, and Iran, Brazil. So it's just crazy. It's like, but now we know she's in all these paintings as well. So now we know really what Lady Justice is. She's the goddess of the Golden Age. She's fighting for freedom. So we know now it's Alpha Omega. She's Omega. So yeah, it's just fascinating. So Starry Night is she's the Golden Age goddess. How did the song go again? This world was never meant for one as beautiful as you. They did not listen, they did not know how. Perhaps they'll listen now. That's the whole story, guys. Nobody listens to us. Maybe they'll listen one day. But I think when you finally see through the illusion, you're honestly too beautiful for this realm. So you have to go to the Golden Age. In sidereal astrology, around 1111 is when the sun is actually in Libra. So 1111 is really important, tied to Libra as well in sidereal. But the Scorpio constellation, it's tying into Egyptian belief. A lot of astrology, according to that the scorpion is Serpent, she who causes the throat to breathe. So that's your throat chakra opening, and that's why they have everybody wearing masks to kind of represent closing it. She is said to be a beautiful woman with a scorpion on her head. The ancient Egyptians revered her as a protector, helper, destroyer, and watcher over the dead. So she causes the chaos, and then you're able to ascend, is basically saying that you're dead, like you're born again, right? So the Scorpio constellation is ruled by Pluto, and he is the god of Hades that allows you to become immortal and go to this other realm. So according to the myths and legends, the Scorpion constellation is said to be the serpent. So that's interesting, because we have the tree of life on his tail, but if he's the serpent, he's the one that's telling you how to be wise. And then Ophiuchus is just above him, right? He's the upper house of Scorpio, and he's holding the serpent. So the serpent wants you to be wise, right? And he wants you to see that the god of this realm is not the god that you think he is, right? He's the god that wants you to keep relooping through. Okay, so in Greek mythology, a scorpion was sent to Apollyon to kill the hunter Orion. Okay, so that makes perfect sense, because Orion is the tree that is doing the harvesting and was rewarded for being placed in the sky by Zeus. So there you go. So the whole story in the Bible is not what we believe it is. You know, the serpent is always the wisdom. He represents wisdom. So he's trying to teach the knowledge of what happens in this realm. And of course, God gets mad because he's telling people how to get out of this realm and be equal to him, right? So that's what it's about. It's a totally twisted story, and that's how I interpret it through the sky. Is the real thing is you want the wisdom, you want to carry the snake so it doesn't bite you, and therefore you can walk out and become able to get into the golden age where you're immortal. And then you come back and you try to save everybody that couldn't see the fact and they got harvested. Okay, so I don't know eventually if enough of us get through that this story ends. You know, we don't keep getting harvested, like we just live in golden age forever and ever. I'm not sure. That's why I fight so hard to try to awaken people, because I think at some point, maybe if enough souls get into the higher realm, we don't have to keep doing this. But who knows? Or maybe we just change roles. I don't know. But the point is, something inside of me tells me it's really important to get as many through as possible. I finally found this picture. I've been looking for it for a while. It's Ophiuchus holding the snake with his back to us. And this is really important because they have him turned around now facing. And you want to take the snake and just walk out of here. You walk through Ophiuchus's doorway. And that has the blue stone on top of it. And if you look at Ophiuchus and it's a stick figure, it looks exactly like a doorway. And they say it's a moth, but it definitely looks like a door to me. And Chiron, who represents Ophiuchus constellation because he was the centaur that taught Asclepius, who's Ophiuchus, how to heal and how to use astrology. And his glyph, his little symbol, looks like a key. So that's why, to me, it's like definitely the Freemason doorway. And this is Astraea's glyph. It looks like a balance. It's like almost like as above, so below. So Egyptian in mythology, in the Book of the Dead, your heart has to be weighed on these scales. So it's the feather of truth. That's why Lady Justice is all about truth. It's the truth of your own soul, whether you have the worth to get into the golden age. Because if you're not true to yourself or true to being able to overcome fear, and you don't take on fear, and you have this truth to you that's more connected to divinity, you're able to go into the golden age because anything you think and manifest appears. So you can't have souls that are deceitful or, you know, in fear-based in the golden age. It won't work. So that's interesting that, again, you know, the original mythology, which is coming from Egypt, is about the scales and the weighing. So it's fascinating. It just all goes back to the same thing. You have to have a pure heart. And the other place that we see the scales is the rider on the black horse of the four horsemen for the apocalypse. So this is important as well. So I was trying to figure out, you know, it definitely represents Libra because it's supposed to represent the fall equinox, that black horse. But in Celtic mythology, the black horse, I guess, would represent Saturn and the white horse, Jupiter, with the black horse representing the limited light of the sun. So now we're at the fall equinox, so the sun starts to get, you know, it's at half and half, but now it starts to really diminish, right? So that's why the black horse represents the fall equinox. And then here, there was a shape changer that would take the form of a black horse wearing chains. Some pukas were evil creatures that caused a lot of harm to travelers, while others were helpful to people, depending on your vibration, I guess. If a person ever tried to ride a puka, they would be taken on a wild ride. We're all on a wild ride. Legends has it that only the High King of Ireland, Brian Boru, was able to ride one successfully. In Ireland, there is a monster called the Duhallan. It's an Irish version of the Headless Horseman. The Duhallan rides a black horse, which carrying his head under his arm, And when it stops riding, a person dies. So here's the Celtic black horse tattoos are a reminder that you have strength, wisdom, and maturity to overcome whatever obstacle life gives you. So it's really the whole thing about the darkness. When they show darkness, it's really about you overcoming your fears and be willing to let go of this realm. Like you're basically willing to die to be free. So that's why it always ends up looking like it's dark, right? Because it's like a death that you have to go through to transcend. So that's how it gets kind of twisted, and people think it's all evil. But transcending is not evil. It's just kind of hidden knowledge. Again, when that's called a cult, which people think is evil, just means hidden. It's the same as the apocalypse. It just means uncovering. It's just everything has a polarity. You can see it as evil or see it as good. But this full moon, on the harvest moon coming up, with the sun on Zavijava, and then it's tying into the fall equinox in Libra, all to do with justice, with an election, is the day I'm going to try shrooms. So I'm going to try it for the first time, and you won't believe what I found out. Astraea ties to mushrooms. That just blew my mind. And of course, everything comes back to the friggin' mushrooms. So Astraeus, which would be like almost like her father's name, ties to this type of mushroom. It's a star-earth mushroom, and they used it in all in ancient cultures. But the Blackfoot native culture called the fungus fallen stars, considering them to be stars fallen to earth during supernatural events. So it's just, I find this fascinating because I think when you activate from the sun and you're able to jump timelines and you get to the golden age, which is basically at the North Pole, and then you have this DMT experience and you're seeing the world through that mindset. And then you come back to save all the other souls. So this is where the whole thing with the Nephilim or the fallen angels come. The fallen angel is an immortal soul that has its full memory. And you're just playing the role of this realm, the duality of this realm to help souls get through the door again. So maybe this just keeps going on and on and on. Like maybe it's not the point of getting more of us across. I don't know. Sometimes I think there has to be more of us so that when we come back, we can make the world better and less evil, maybe less intense with all these wars and everything. And we can get out of the Iron Age and actually have everybody living in the Golden Age for a while. So maybe that's all just a big cycle and just never ends. But it's fascinating because it always comes back to the mushroom. And this is really what religion is. It's a DMT experience that the shamans would get by going into the caves, into the dark. You can get to that DMT levels just by being in the dark. And then they would also take mushrooms, and they would take the Amanita muscaria mushroom urine. It always goes back to urine, right? Phosphorus. This is where the whole Santa Claus story comes from, because he was the original shaman dressed up in red and white, because the reindeer used to love eating the Amanita muscaria mushrooms, and then the shamans realized it was easier to drink the reindeer's pee than to actually digest the mushrooms themselves, because you get like a side effect from them. I guess the Amanita muscaria is pretty intense. And so that's the whole story of Santa Claus and the reindeer. It's all tying to mushrooms. And if you look in all northern hemisphere cultures like Norway and stuff, they always have at Christmas time the mushroom. And even they used to hang them on the tree, like these red balls with the dots on them. So this is like the whole symbolism is always going back to the mushroom. So it's just bizarre. And then, like, where is Santa Claus? He's at the North Pole. And it's like a magical land with all these little elves, which when people take DMT, like mushrooms or ayahuasca, they see these little elves. So there you go. It's the whole thing. It's through our culture. It's just hilarious. I find it so funny. Just want to thank you guys, all support for the readings and stuff that you guys send me, and just keep tuned. I'll probably post when I do post an astrology you know, looking at the week ahead. I'll probably end up posting it in crystal-tyme as well for a little while, and then maybe I'll just end up just putting it at tymewilltellastrology. So I'll drop that link. And if anybody else wants another reading or a new reading, sorry, for new people, you can reach me at my email, which is in the description box. And it takes me just about a week to get that going. If you don't hear from me, if you message me, you don't hear from me, it's because my email is not acting properly. People get blocked. I get them on my message board, but they're not. The messages aren't coming through my email. They're supposed to be coming through both places. So it's really confusing sometimes. But if you don't hear from me within a day or two, it's because I didn't get the message. So just remember that, and bliss to you guys, and try to enjoy this full moon. It's going to be pretty intense emotionally, because Pisces really pulls on your emotional aspect and your sensitivity, and the moon being there with Neptune is going to be intense. So good luck and enjoy the ride.